Okay. Good evening. It's 7:37. I'm going to call the Lower Makefield Township Sewer Authority to call the meeting. If we could have a roll call, starting with Mrs. Kirk.
Barbara Kirk, a solicitor for the township.
Joe Lingle, sewer board member.
Okay.
Greg Hucklebridge, Public Works Director for Lower Makefield Township.
Greg.
Fred Ebert, Fred Ebert, Authority Engineer.
Joe. Scott, say your name, please.
Scott Phillips, member.
Phil Tyler, chairman. Okay. We need to, I think our last meeting was June 25th, 2020, Greg. Am I correct? And
We had
no?
July 1st, we had one.
Oh, that's right. I apologize.
You had a regular one, like you just said, and then we had that special one.
Okay. So can I get approval of the minutes for our last meeting?
You're going to need approval from both meetings, right?
Yes. So just, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the special meeting on July 1st, I believe it was.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Then our second meeting was the 25th, Greg?
Looks like it was May 21st.
May
May
21st.
21st.
May 21st of 2020.
I think we had, no, we didn't. Okay. Can I get approval to do the May 21st Sewer Authority meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 21st authority meeting.
Okay. All in favor? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So it's all done. Now, if we can get Fred for 10 minutes to give us a report.
Yeah. Well, you get both Greg and I tonight. The first one that is on the agenda is the executive summary of the Lower Makefield Township evaluation. This is basically the full report. I last discussed this with the authority on April 25th, 2019. I then issued the full report, which was a 35-page report, plus exhibits of over 100 pages on June 25th. I also prepared an executive summary, which is basically everything that we discussed on April 25th, with one major clarification, is that we only looked at viable options that we could actually implement so that the Board of Supervisors could make an informed decision on this. This was presented to the Board of Supervisors on July 15th and publicly discussed there. Since we did not have an authority meeting that I was able to attend between the June 25th report and now, I wanted to provide a summary of everything for some of the new members, and then also to answer any questions that the board may have on this. We cannot discuss the sewer sale because there's a current court injunction. So the report was timed to come out with the results of the sewer sale so that both this board, the sewer committee, and the Board of Supervisors could look at all options on the table. When we started the evaluation, I'll just do a quick summary and then ask for any questions. When we initially started this process, there were 4 options on the table: upgraded the existing Morrisville wastewater treatment plant, construction of a new wastewater treatment plant by Morrisville Municipal Authority on the U.S. Steel property, conveyance of flows to the Lower Bucks County Joint Municipal Authority, and then conveyance of all of our flows to Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority. During the process, 2 additional options came up as part of the evaluation. One was the construction of a wastewater treatment plant at Makefield and Lower Makefield. The second was the sale of the sewer system, which was evaluated by PFM. So in a summary of that, as going through the process, there were, in the final determination, there were 2 options that were deemed not viable. The first option was the construction or the upgrade of the existing Morrisville Municipal Authority's existing treatment plant, because Morrisville took it off the table and no longer was considering that, and had proceeded and has spent approximately $400,000 on the design of the new treatment plant down at the U.S. Steel property. The other option that was taken off the table was, or deemed not viable, I shouldn't say taken off the table, deemed not viable, was conveyance of all of our flows to the Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority through the Neshaminy Interceptor. And that was taken off because there's not capacity there. So we had to look at, in order for everyone to make a decision or recommendation on which way to go, what could we implement now? What could we put in our 537 plan and we proceed with what we know today? So that led down to the three options: conveyance to Lower Bucks County Joint Municipal Authority, which has an overall cost of approximately $51 million. Our participation in the Morrisville Municipal Authority wastewater treatment plant, U.S. Steel, which is a price of $48,600,000, but that assumes that 10% of capacity is purchased by Falls Township. Falls Township today has not indicated that they have committed to that. The next option, which would be the Lower Makefield Township wastewater treatment plant of $54 million on Makefield, but that requires full participation by Yardley Borough for their flows. So these were all presented. There was no numbers have been updated or changed since the April 25th report that I gave you. As I said, the only change that was made to this was to eliminate the two options because they were deemed not viable at this time. Not that they wouldn't be in the future, but right at this time, we need to make an informed decision. So I wanted to provide that update. We provided all the authority members with the executive summary. We were also willing to provide a copy of the full report to anybody. It is on the township website for everyone to review. But I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have on that executive summary or the status that I can, given the limitations of the injunction, which is still pending at this time.
Joe, you got any questions?
I have a couple, Fred, if you have a minute or two here. So just so I'm clear, the U.S. Steel, the new build on U.S. Steel, you mentioned about the contribution from Falls Township. If I read the report right, that also, the cost that you quoted there also assumes about $10 million worth of value engineering in that.
That is correct.
And that's also based on the assumption that the final number that you quoted in the executive summary, because I wasn't clear on it, that assumes that Yardley will not reduce their share from 12.6 to 6.3, or will reduce their share. So,
will reduce their share. So it does include Yardley reducing it, but no commitment for the Falls Township flows.
Okay, got it. Thanks for that. And just as a general question, all of these options obviously don't include any of the costs for the regular ongoing of our conveyance system. That all remains intact. We have to still keep that up to snuff, right? That's not so that wasn't included as a cost. This is purely for the options discussed for the new capital, new costs.
Absolutely. This is just for the treatment costs alone.
Got it. And just the other thing, and more just I was looking for it, and I'm sure it's all in there. I didn't see it in one place. As I was looking at the overall kind of the mission from the supervisors was to look at all these different options through the lens of, five different things, four different things, including cost, lowest cost for sewer rates, service, the ability to accurately predict budget, and also input on the management and operations of each of these scenarios. It would be nice to hear how each of these different scenarios play out on those other non-financial dimensions. I think they're mentioned in each one, but I'd like to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on those.
Yeah, I absolutely can. And the other thing is that, just for everyone who's read this report, is the report is really a historical documentation of what was discussed at the sewer subcommittee level. It was not an independent report where I did findings or came out with either a recommendation. It was more of a presentation of facts. But with that said, I can go through each of the options and kind of discuss what was really in there. And, you know, if you want to list which topic, it's easier for me probably to say the topic, and then I can go through all 5 of those of which one you want me to, which item you want me to address.
I would just say, can I have this kind of mental matrix in my head as I'm thinking of each one, because we have the costs clearly. So I guess, say, for example, the new plant at U.S. Steel, the ability. So the one criteria about having input into the management and operations of that.
All right, and then what I'd like to do is talk about the input and operation of all 5 options.
Perfect.
That way we can compare apples to apples, you know, right away. Yep. There has been, we have asked in almost every meeting to have a new form of governance or a new regional authority established for that. And it's been totally non-responsive. Now, I will say Morrisville has always said they're open to it, but we wanted to see what would that look like. Would it be based on proportionate costs coming in and then as additional shares? How would the board seats be set up? Because that would be required for a new regional authority, because Morrisville's existing authority is both water and sewer. So in my brain, their existing authority would remain intact for their internal collection system, and a new treatment only authority would be established, similar to like Lower Perkiomen Valley Regional Sewer Authority, East Norton Plymouth, the other regional authorities, where it's normally flow proportional or cost proportional. Whatever shares or capital contributions you put in, that's how many seats you get on the board proportionally. So that is going to be, and assume that will be there, but there has been no movement at all to do that. On Lower Bucks Joint Municipal Authority, they are very clear, no, you're not getting a seat.
Yeah, that was
Bucks
clear.
County Water and Sewer Authority, very clear, you're not getting a seat. The new treatment plant would have a new authority, a new treatment authority that would be for both Lower Makefield and Yardley Borough, would clearly have seats for both of them on there, and the potential for their employees to be utilized by both Yardley Borough for their sewer system and Lower Makefield for their sewer system, and take that out of their public works department and put that back into a separate authority and that would be part of the sewer rental charges. And you know, so that's how that would be handled.
Yep, perfect. And that's exactly what I was in my head trying to think of the weighting of these different criteria. Obviously, cost is very heavily you're going to lean towards where people are going to be interested in, but certainly having some voice at the table. And the Lower Bucks one jumped off the sheet as we would have no voice on it, but the other two.
And I think that's the most important, because one thing we've learned with Morrisville, it's not always about cost in the long term. That you need to make sure that everything's being proactively preventive maintenance done, things are being replaced, rather than buying things and leaving them with no maintenance. Lower costs during the life, but then you're replacing a whole new treatment plant, rather than having a continually updated treatment plant where there's no major bond issues. You pay for it once and you maintain it for the life.
Gotcha. How about I won't make you go through all 5 of them, because some of them are pretty clear in the report. Actually, all of them are in there. I know that, but I know there's been a lot of discussion about the predictability of costs and budget. So kind of on a longer term basis.
And I again, that's probably the exact opposite ranking there, where Lower Bucks would be the most uniform, and it would be the most identifiable, as would Bucks County's. Now, Bucks County's is going to go up significantly, but you would know it. Morrisville's would be very uniform in the honeymoon period of a new treatment plant, very limited repairs. But if something goes down, there's a capital call that we don't know about, that we're fully responsible for. All the other ones, we're paying a rate per 1,000 gallons. So the only fluctuation we have, wet year or dry year. in the new treatment plant of either in Lower Makefield or in Morrisville. If something breaks, it needs to be paid for either out of a capital reserve, emergency loan, and then these. So there's a lot more unpredictability about that. It's a limited risk initially. New treatment plant, all the equipment should be very good for 5 to 10 years. After that, that risk goes up and the variability goes up.
And as far as, I guess, separate to that, thank you for the explanation of those two dimensions of it. For the lower Bucks one, the conveyance one, can you talk a little bit more about so capital improvements to that system potentially LMT would be responsible for, but not get any benefit from it because of the way it's all kind of rolled together? Can you explain that a little bit better?
Well, yeah, we would actually be paying a retail rate, so we would not have any capital calls on that. Unfortunately, what's happening though is that their retail rate includes the improvements to their own collection system. So we would be paying for improvements to their collection system because we're paying the same rate and receive no benefit from that. Okay. So the treatment plant, we would, but and they do lots of projects in their collection system. I mean, $5 million a year that we would be paying for and receiving no benefit of.
That's right.
Okay, Scott, you got anything to ask?
Yep.
Yeah, I got a couple questions. On the last page, what is the use of the user fees category? How is that used along with capital costs to compare the alternatives?
Okay, yeah, you're talking about my full report? Or I guess they're in both of them.
I'm looking at the summary report right now.
Okay. It's the same number either way. There are 3 components in the user fees. Now, this is only for the estimated cost of treatment based on the flow per EDU. So the 3 components are the debt service over 30 years for the capital improvements. And in the case of Lower Bucks Joint Municipal Authority, it would be purchase of capital investment in the plant, the $15 million, the cost of the pump station and force main. In U.S. Steel, it would be our Lower Makefield Township's percentage of the overall cost of the treatment plant, taken out as a bond or a loan. And same with Lower Makefield. So that's component 1 is debt service. Component number 2 is the actual operation and maintenance of the treatment plant. What does it cost for labor, electricity, normal replacement of equipment, sludge disposal, chemicals? That's the second component. The third component is what I call capital reserve. That is an annual savings amount where you take all the mechanical and structural components of the treatment plant, you divide it by its design life, and you save that every year. So if a pump can last for 10 years, you put in a capital reserve account 1/10 the cost of that pump every year. If the treatment plant tankage has a life of 100 years, you put 1/100th of that. So that way, what that does is it builds a capital reserve that when things break, we have the cash on hand to pay for the replacement. So those 3 items were added up in the report to come up with a user fee. Now that user fee is only for treatment. And what Joe had said earlier is very true. We still have to pay for all the conveyance up to the treatment plant. And with maintaining our pump stations, having contract operators, I&I projects, all of that.
Okay, so I guess another way to look at it is an annual cost to be added to the cost of the capital cost of the project, or different alternatives?
That includes all the capital costs. That includes 100% of the capital costs in that user fee, broken out over a 30-year loan or bond life at I think 3 or 4% interest. I think it was 4% that I used.
Okay, so that's an all-in annual cost
per user.
Per user, okay.
An EDU is known as an equivalent dwelling unit. That is basically one residential house.
Okay.
Okay.
So that already reflects. Sorry, go ahead. So those user fees already reflect debt service on the capital cost in the second column?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. If someone wanted to jump in, I did have a few other questions, but I can come back.
Fred, the only thing I can tell you is they don't have a site at US Steel. Okay. And US Steel wants to sell the entire complex, not parcels. So I don't know if where Marshall's going to start looking for another parcel somewhere, but I don't think it's going to be on the site of US
Wow.
Steel.
Yeah, so maybe that existing one comes back, but I believe that I saw they spent about $400,000 on design so far.
Yeah.
2018, I think.
Yeah, in 2018 they
More
spent that.
last year.
Yeah, well, they thought they were going to get the U.S. Steel site, but that just fell through. U.S. Steel wants to sell the entire site, one person. That's it. They don't want to break it up in parcels here, here, and here. So that, like I said, how many years ago, Greg? I think you were still on the board. I said, don't look for Marshall to go anywhere.
Probably about 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
You said that when I first started in 2016.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we're right back at the square one in a way, right, Fred? Back at the old plant?
I would say so.
Okay. All right. Moving along, Fred.
I think I'm turning it over to Greg to give you guys an update on all the pump station upgrades and repairs that we've happened, just so there's been a lot of repairs and maintenance that's been performed. And we just want to make sure that the entire board is aware of all the repairs and maintenance that's happened basically this year.
Yeah, so this would be from 2020. In no real particular order, I'm just going to kind of read through my list that I put together here. The Heacock pump station was having some electrical issues. We had that checked out and had to replace the relay, but that was causing some havoc with getting calls out and having to make sure it's pumping. The next one I wanted to talk about is Stackhouse. I alluded to this, I think, at the last meeting. We had air valve issues. We had to replace an air valve, and that's the part we had a special order. We also had some more electrical issues, and that involved parts that you can't order. So we had to kind of bypass a few things and just kind of rig it to work for the time being. The next one, Brookstone, another one that we're looking to, do some major work on. Brookstone, we had to replace seals on one of the pumps. We have two pumps. One of them basically was not working at all. So we're down to the one. We had to replace those seals. We also had to replace a high wet well float alarm. So that tells us when the water elevation's rising too high, they'll give us a call. That wasn't working. The wiring was bad on it. We weren't going to get the call. Number 4, Silver Lake. This was a big one. The shaft from the top where the motors are located all the way down, I think it goes about 50 feet or so. We have 3 pumps, 3 shafts, and then 3 motors on top. One of the shafts actually shattered into several pieces. Catastrophic failure. We had to have that custom fabrication and replacement done on that. The next one, Sherwood Pump Station. This just happened over this past weekend. One of the, we only have 2 motors and pumps on that one. Similar setup as Silver Lake, not as deep, but one of the motors, the bolts that hold it into place, they actually snapped and it spun itself and ripped out the wiring. Luckily, the other pump could keep up and everything over the weekend, but we had to have that taken apart. When we did that, we found there was only 3 of the 4 bolts initially installed. They all are contained within the housing. So there was only 3. So that might have been rocking for the last, how old's that pump station? 50 years. So that finally broke loose. We have to have a new plate made up, or we're going to try to have it refurbished. We're getting that price right now. We should have that back next week. That's the hope. We also had a bad starter earlier this year on that and had to have it replaced. The next one, Mill Road Pump Station. That's right down the street from our administration building. One of the pumps burned out, and that's actually in the process of being replaced with a new one. So we're down to 1 pump right now in that one. Fox Hill Pump Station, we had a a bad water pump. It was leaking. Well, we had that apart. We also saw that the radiator was in bad shape, so we replaced the radiator and had a new water pump brought in as well. And that took some time to get that taken care of. That was a failure. Kimball's Field, that had some electrical issues on the float controls, and we had to replace another one of those high wet well floats for the alarm. So that happened earlier this year as well. I got two more items. The next one was Chanticleer pump station up north. We have gaskets in between the pump to the force main, and that kept blowing out on the one pump. We tried changing out the pump. We took a look at the force main. Quite a lot of diagnostics went in. We ended up changing the style of the connection from the pump to the force main. We added a length of essentially hose with more hard connections instead of that gasket system. And that seems to be a more typical style of connection today anyway. So we basically updated it and haven't had issues since. So that one's working a lot better. And finally, this is more of a maintenance thing. We pumped out the wet wells at Heacock twice this year and Maple Vale once, and we're scheduling Kimball's Field. Heacock, it's really critical. We started doing that as long as I've been here. We started last year trying to do it every quarter. You get a lot of grease and rags built up in there. And if you do have an issue where you pump it down, it would really cause havoc with the pumps. So we have the other two pump stations that we're looking at, and Kimball's is getting done next. So
Heacock, Greg, isn't that the one that where the shopping centers are?
yes.
Weren't we supposed to have some kind of ordinance for the grease traps?
Yeah, so maybe Fred, you want to chip in on that one, of how that works with them? Because they're basically grandfathered at this time, I believe.
Yeah, the issue there is that there's still a lot of internal grease traps, or I call them under the sink or in the slab. And the issue is they have upgraded their dishwasher, so it's a very low volume but extremely high temperature and high pressure. As a result, it liquefies all the grease that's in those grease traps, and they're conveyed out. And until there's a change in use, we cannot require them to put exterior grease traps in. All new construction of new restaurants and retrofits or changes of use, we have required exterior grease traps on all of those. So unfortunately, we're hamstrung with them being grandfathered in until there's a change in use where we can require the new items under the ordinance.
Let me ask you this, and Barbara, Fred, and Greg. If a restaurant closes up and a new restaurant wants to come in, wouldn't they have to comply with the new grease trap?
My initial thought is I don't know if that's really a change of use if it's still a restaurant.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's new owners.
an occupancy permit might require upgrades to meet the current requirements.
I think it depends. I know that right now, if they have if it goes from, like, think of it as a strip store. If it goes from a card store to a restaurant, they definitely do. If it goes from a Chinese restaurant to a pizza shop, I don't believe that they're required to, because the use doesn't change. But if they change, so if it goes from a bank to a Burger King, yes.
Okay.
But if it goes from Panera Bread to TGI Fridays, no. It's my understanding right now.
That was my understanding as well, Fred. I just wanted
To me, I figured if it changed owners and they got to come up to code on everything, that would be one of the codes they would have to come up with, is changing out that grease trap.
Yeah, but most of the updates to codes are state issued, not necessarily just local. So
Yeah.
if it was something that the state issued, then they probably would. If it's just the township's requirement, if it's an exact same use as what existed there before, we're not going to be able to enforce it.
Okay. So anything we can enforce is new construction.
New construction
Okay.
and change of use.
Another issue we have on the Heacock pump station is rags coming in. We believe most of those rags are coming from the retirement style assisted living facilities.
No, well, that's right, because
It's gonna
you
be
got
harder
one
to
that just
pull that.
opened up on Stony Hill. And then you're going to have Caddis opening up soon.
Well, the good thing about Caddis is that they have their own pump station before it gets to us.
Okay.
Hopefully they'll catch their own stuff. The one that's up on the artist one up on Stony Hill.
Yeah, that's the
I don't
one.
think that one comes to Heacock. I think that goes right to, it's the other service area. I think that goes to the Chamonix Interceptor.
Yes.
Yeah. So that one wouldn't come to this one either.
So you're talking about the other Sunrise.
Sunrise comes to us.
Yeah.
And then
That's
Manor
what it's
Care, that comes to Heacock as well. There's quite a bit that comes there.
Huh. That's keeping it busy.
Oh, yeah. The
So-
pump station has been working very well since we did the upgrades last year on the pumps, having them rebuilt. So we have a lot less issues, but we obviously still got to do the maintenance.
You know, well, you're always going to have maintenance, and
Absolutely.
we've really cut down the maintenance. Yes, Barbara.
A question, Greg. Since the system obviously needs updates and work, and the fact that you're finding these rags or wipes, does it make sense to send something to the quote violators, like a notice that if it continues, they're going to be fined, or for the costs of upgrade or repair if the rag damages the system?
I'm not sure if we have the ability to do that. Fred, have you ever had
Well,
experience?
and the problem is you have no way of tracing it back to them. It's
There's-
not like there's red colored rags that come from this location, or there is, that. And especially now during COVID, there's a lot of wipes that are just coming from residential houses, wiping things down that I couldn't tell you that came from the assisted living and this came from apartment 3G, so.
I just was wondering if the assistant living facilities were so limited as to where they go for their flows that we would be able to just trace it that way.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that we could. And I mean, the next step probably would be there on Haycock would be to install a muffin monster. And they have a new version of a muffin monster, which is a sewage grinder on the influent that I say it slices and dices. Before everything just sliced, the problem is that especially with these wipes, they just reknit and become balls and are actually worse than when it was a larger piece. They have one now that kind of cuts it to the, slices it horizontally and vertically and makes it in much smaller, almost like a confetti. Think of it almost like a paper shredder that you would see there. That's probably the next upgrade. The other thing that I wanted to mention was with Greg, not only did we replace the pumps, but I think replacing the valves also helped too, that the valves aren't leaking, allowing water to drain back from the force main. So I think the pumps were the majority, but I think having those valves all replaced was also a big improvement.
That valve, I've missed that on my list. We had to change out a check valve this year on Heacock, and that was causing some issues in the early part of the year. So thanks, Fred, for reminding me actually on that one. The check valve is a big issue, and that took care of a lot of issues.
So we corrected a lot of maintenance. Basically, it's going to not give us more problems.
We did more maintenance this year than you probably have done in the last 10 years.
Well, that's good.
Oh, it is very good. And we have a good budget that we can continue to do that. Yeah, I mean, we added $140,000 a year, or basically $10,000 per pump station. So that as things break, we're fixing it. And that instead of rebuilding pumps, we're replacing pumps.
Good. Anything else, Greg?
No, that's pretty much my update there. If you have any other questions, I'm all I'm here for you.
Hey, Greg,
Yes, Scott.
Greg, this is Scott. Were all those maintenance and repair items since the last sewer authority meeting?
No, I'm sorry. They were from the beginning of 2020. Some of them happened within the last 2 weeks. Some of them were from January, February. So I was giving you more the last 6-month update, basically.
Oh, okay. I was afraid you were going to say that all happened recently and that
Thank goodness.
there's no budget. Fred answered the question about the budget. You apparently have enough budget.
Yeah.
But I was afraid you were going to say we can't do the capital projects now.
No.
Yeah.
That's not it at all. This was actually within the budget. We're in pretty good shape with our budget, to be honest with you. So I'm glad that we were able to take care of this stuff and not just Band-Aid it. So.
And there is two budgets too. There's an operation and maintenance budget, which is separate from the capital budget. And not that in the case of an emergency, money couldn't be pulled over from one to another, but they are distinct budgets that are separate. And we try very hard to stay within each line item of each budget.
I was just going to go down that same path, Fred, for both you and Greg, just philosophically, because as I was thinking when you were talking about the Silver Lake, shafts going, do you keep some of those items on hand, or just rely on the redundancy of the systems to get them as needed? For example, has there been a capital budget assigned to buying spare pumps and shafts that you have on hand, or is it really just as needed against the maintenance budget that sits out there year to year?
It's really as needed, because you don't want it. Pumps don't do good if you store them even in a dry condition.
Yeah.
You get wearing on the bearings sit and you get flat ball bearings, and it's really it's not good. So we rely on the redundancy. Plus, we also own a portable pump, bypass pump, that the township owns. That if both pumps were to go, a lightning strike that takes my controller out, we have a portable diesel-driven pump that we can hook up, and emergency bypass connections on most, but not all, of our pump stations, that we can hook that up. But normally you rely on the redundancy. Our large pump stations have 3 pumps. We only need to operate 2 of the 3. Our smaller pump stations have 2 pumps. We only need to operate 1 of the 2. But there's a chance, like if a shaft breaks, when it breaks, it could take the other 2 shafts out. They're 20, 30 feet in the air, and if that twindles around, it could take the other ones out. So, and you can't anticipate that, but so far we've been able to do most of the repairs or replacement in a timely manner. Timely manner means about 2 weeks, if you have to get a new pump.
We do keep some universal shafts, not the shafts, universal joints for the
Joints. Yep.
Those are more like wear items. So when we see them starting to get a little funny, we do replace those, but we don't have like extra shafts or pumps.
Okay. Moving on.
Yep.
I guess we'll call new business, the bid results.
Yep. And I'm going to go through. We actually have a total of 7 contracts that were out for the 4 projects. We ended up having to split and add. The reason it went from 5 to 7 was we had to split the structural, mechanical, and the electrical. When we did the final analysis, there are different trades we have different bid limits. Anything over $21,000 needs to be bid separately for electric. We did receive over 51 bids for those. And I'll start with in the beginning, and I'm following the format of my summary memo that I sent out.
Yes.
The cured in place pipe liner, we received 9 bids, which is highly unusual. I normally have 3 to 4 at most. The bids range from $259,817 to approximately $455,000. The budget is right in the middle at $390,000. Low bidder was $259,817. There were actually 2 bidders that were relatively low. The main reason for this is, number 1, the competitiveness. Number 2, both of those bidders recently purchased large amounts of 10, 12-inch liner, hundreds of thousands of feet. So they got a great volume discount that was basically unprecedented. And we watched them, because it's on pen bid, we watched the 9 bidders pull their bids on and off as they reduced their price. One of the major items was bypass pumping. The pipes are full. This is a major line item, and they're behind houses, not easily accessible. We estimated that because of the access issues and the amount of water that they'd have to pump at $76,000. The low bidder bid $7,000. Now, he owns the equipment and the piping, but he basically did not charge for the use of his pumps, rental of his piping. He put that in for free and only had labor it costs. So we're recommending award to Standard Pipe Services, LLC, contingent upon review of the documents by the solicitor's office and the engineer's office, making sure all their forms are correct, to them, which is, approximately, $130,000 less than the budgeted amount.
They want to get their people working.
Yeah. And that absolutely was a great price. I was happy. And to have 9 bidders, I'd never had more than 3 or 4. Guys were, this is a good job. And we just got lucky, not to say lucky, but we timed the bid very well that there was no other competing projects.
Right.
Sometimes
There's not a lot of competing projects on Penn bid today.
Yep. So that was just a great timing of that one.
Okay. So that's your recommendation.
That's our recommendation.
It saves $100,000. So
130.
yeah. Joe, any questions or want to make a motion?
No, I'd like to make a motion to support moving that bid forward to that selected one pending, solicitor and engineering review.
All
I
right.
would recommend the motion be that you're recommending the Board of Supervisors enter into and award the bid
Right.
Standard Pipe Services LLE, subject to review by the Solicitor and Engineer's Office.
That's just what he said.
Thanks, Barbara. I thought that's what I said. No?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, Craig.
Good. Next contract is contract SWR 20-2. This is the sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation. We received 4 bids on that. Wide range of bids, but it was only because some guys just put a very high bid in for the sake of bidding. $34,000 to $113,000. Our budget is $35,000, which is just $1,000 above the low bid. It's advanced rehabilitation technology. They do an extensive amount of work. They do a lot of work in this area, and I think that's why they so aggressively did it. So our recommendation is to award to Advanced Rehabilitation Technology in the amount of recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they enter into a contract with an advanced recommendation contingent upon final review by the Solicitor and Engineer's Office in the amount of $34,000.
All right. Motion. I'll motion what Fred has suggested to us. You all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next.
Next contract is SWR 20-3A, which is a Brookstone pump station. This is the mechanical aspect of it. We received 9 bids, which is an extreme amount of bids for a rehab of an existing pump station. The bids range from $270,357 to $598,500. The budget for the mechanical portion of the overall project was $285,000. The low bid was $270,356. Low bidder was Blooming Glen Contractors, the wastewater division. They're well known. I've done a lot of work with them in the past.
Company.
They are, very good company.
Yeah.
They'll chase some change orders, but this bid was not only was the bid very close, but the 3 lowest bidders were all within 8% of each other. So on a retrofit, that tells me that these guys know what they're doing and went very aggressive. So our recommendation is to award to Blooming Glen Contractors Wastewater Division in the amount of, or recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they enter into a contract with Blooming Glen Wastewater Contractors Wastewater Division in the amount of $270,356, contingent upon final review of the documents by the Solicitor and Engineer's Office.
I'll make a motion to move forward that recommendation as just recently stated by Mr. Ebert.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Next item.
Right.
Yep. Next item is contract SWR 20-3B. This is the electrical for the Brookstone pump station. It was debatable whether or not you could have incorporated this into one contract. We decided to err on the side of caution and break the contracts out separately, and so that there would be no challenge to the bid, and we'd be in full accordance with all the bidding laws. We received 10 bids. They range from $48,195 to $108,000. The budget was $49,750 for the electrical portion of the overall bid. The low bid was $48,195 by AJM Electric. The bid, once again, is very close to the budgeted amount. And the 3 lowest bids it was 8.2%. I just made it 8.5 of each other. which tells me all contractors knew what they were bidding. And the guys that went aggressive after it really were down there. I mean, when you're at a less than $50,000 bid to have 3 guys with an 8%, you're talking 3,500 hours between number 1 and number 3. That tells me these guys knew the work. There was no question on it, and they bid it aggressively. So we would recommend that the authority recommend to the Lower Makefield Township Board of Supervisors to enter into a contract with AJM Electric in the amount of $48,195, contingent upon final review of the documents by the solicitor and engineer's offices.
And before you move on that, Fred, on your summary,
I see it.
you see the change. So
Yeah,
in case you want to submit it, you carried over Blooming Glen.
Yeah, I did. And just so everyone is also aware, and you guys did receive in your board package, there were individual letters for every contract that identified the cost of everything, the bid items, all that information was provided to the board, and that will be updated again, hopefully before it gets on the Board of Supervisors packet tomorrow.
Anybody?
I'll make a motion to support the recommendation as articulated by Fred with the corrected name of the contractor.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, Freddie.
Okay. Now we hit the tougher discussion that we're going to have to do a rebid and reject. So contract SWR 20-4A, which is a Stackhouse Pump Station Mechanical. We received 7 bids. The prices range from $463,490 to $861,000. The budget for the mechanical portion was $377,881. The low bid is $463,490 to PSI Pumping Solutions. This bid is significantly higher than our budget amount. And a lot of the reasons for this was when we did the original grant, we hadn't had any design. We didn't even own the property, have access. So the depth of the wet well was a major issue. We also included a muffin monster and the pumps and controls. The manufacturer or the manufacturer's rep realized that he had proprietary control over this because no one else put an equal into it. And he really took us to the cleaner. Whereas same equipment vendor on the Brookstone, but we allowed or equals in on there because people suggested it. And he dropped his price there, tried to make it up here. And as a result, because we're so far over budget, I'm recommending that we reject this bid, that we rebid with a revised design in August of 2020. I'm going to recommend that to try to drive the price down of all 3 contracts by about $136,000 is what the composite is over. Removing the muffin monster will save us $45,000 on the mechanical and $5,000 on the electrical. By allowing or equals on the pumps will save us a minimum of $25,000 to $50,000. We might be able to go with a smaller generator because we don't have a muffin monster, could save us $10,000. One of the tricky parts of having all 3 is I'm recommending that a 4th bid be allowed, where one contractor be able to provide deducts for bidding and being low on all 3 contracts. That will avoid the coordination issue because right now you have to build the conveyance system over and then stop, leave them build the wet well. That gets tied in. Then the electrical guy comes in, does his work. Then you got to reconnect the force main. So you may have to be out there 3 times on 500 feet of pipe. That's not efficient. So we're going to allow them to have a deduct. Also, we only had 2 bids, and I'll discuss this later on that, but allowing that 3rd bid will, I think, or 4th bid will, I think, allow for a significantly reduced price. And a number of contractors had asked if they could do that. We just couldn't do that it was too late in the bidding process for them to allow that option. There's other things that we'll be doing, such as maybe a round wet well without a muffin monster. Round is a little bit more economical than a square wet well. So we're going to squeeze every dollar. My guys are actually going through, analyzing the bids, and then seeing what can we do, but that doesn't impact the grant. Because I'm stuck with the grant and the grant requirements. But now that we know the depths and everything like that, we're really going to do what we can do to drive the price back down. The goal is to get that authorized for bid by our August meeting. And maybe we may even ask you, if we're going to have an August meeting, to move it up so I can get it authorized at the second Board of Supervisors, receive grants in September, and still be able to award this job in October then.
All right. And you're going to put or equal?
Yes, I'm going to do or equal. We're going to go through everything there that we can to reduce that and eliminate anyone from taking advantage of that.
Yeah, because if you're only specifying like a certain brand or anything, then they're going to hit you with everything they want. So, but
and I think, yep, because he gave us a cost, and then I saw the bid that he sent out to everyone else. It was almost double.
Yeah.
So he waited to the last minute to release this thing, and no one else gave him a or equal. So, and I can't force guys to do submissions. This time, I'm going to highly suggest to his competition to apply for their being or equals.
Good.
So, Fred, in light of your representation, do you want the board to separately make a motion to approve your recommendations to reject each of the 3 bids for Stackhouse, or can you accept one motion?
That's up to the board. My recommendation, if you've heard the logic, is to reject each bid and rebid it. And because they are all linked, I think it would be appropriate to do as one motion because they're all connected. You can't award one contract without awarding all 3.
You know, make a motion to reject all bids for Stackhouse and rebid it.
Yeah.
Before making that motion, can I just ask one quick question from you, Fred? That, if I understand it correctly, the or equal specific to the pumps and the Muffin Monster will be eliminated completely from the design, or?
Yes. Yeah. Right now, in order for me to bring the price down to the budgeted amount for this, I have to, the Muffin Monster is about 45,000, structural mechanically, and 5,000. I got to cut 136,000 out of everything. That's my biggest chunk. Most of our pump stations don't have it. This is a small pump station. I like Muffin Monsters. I think they are appropriate, but if it doesn't fit our budget, it's the only thing that I could do. I was hopeful to get this in, but once the depth got driven down, I can't change the depth of the wet well, can't change the location. This is one of the only things that I can do there.
Yeah, certainly not questioning. I just didn't know if there was if it was more of a nice to have and a good practice, or if there will be, by removing it, will create further problems.
I will be putting in a trash rack to protect the pumps.
Okay,
yes. So basically, instead of having it being all automatic, the operator is going to have to go down there once a week and clean it.
Do some cleaning.
So I was trying to avoid that for our operators, but unfortunately I can't. But we could retrofit it in the future, most likely. But we don't have them on our small pump stations.
You might be surprised.
I just like to do them.
When you put it out for bid again, you know, they'll realize that they got to come down in price and still give you everything you asked for in the first bid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and we're going to get as much things. I mean, some of the things is I had competitive bids. They can't control if they only get one price from the manufacturers on these things. And so the way I can help the contractors get their price down is by opening up their competition to the vendors.
Well, that's I got stuck in the same thing one time bidding. The guy with the pump, all of us went to him, and he just kept jacking the price up, and we had all no choice. But as soon as we went to alternate pumps, everything changed.
Yep, and that's unfortunately what we got to do. And what I'm shocked at is the contractors did it on Brookstone, and they didn't on this one. It was a lot of the same guys bid it, and they didn't place in the same locations. Like they bid one very aggressive. I mean, some guys were in the bottom 3 on one and in the top 3 on the other. I mean, public bidding is always a strange animal, but this one we spent a lot of time, the majority of the day yesterday, dissecting that bid so we understood what happened and how do we change it and what realistically can we do to come back in. So.
Shame you put out 2 bids. The one bid that you already did where the high prices came in, and then an alternate with equal to.
Yep.
I was wondering, would you be able to have a bid alternate for the Muffin Monster, for instance? So you could add it in if it came in under budget.
You might be able to, but I don't think I can cut 136,000 without it. Or we could do that, and then the Board of Supervisors and this board could say, "Hey, do we want to spend the extra money because we saved $130,000
the other one, yeah.
on the other one?" So if you actually combined all of the bids, we were less than our 2020 capital budget.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because we're 130,000 light on one bid and 130,000 high on the other, and then the other two bids we saved enough on Brookstown around 18,000, I think, that we'd be under as a composite. But yet, I can't recommend in good faith that you're getting the right value for your
No,
dollars.
I would want to rebid it in equal to.
Yep.
And
we'll make it very clear, and we will aggressively have the equals making sure their prices are out there.
Right. And you really, I think when you put out the second bid, you really don't have to cut too much into your plans out.
There's not much you can really cut. Besides the Muffin Monster, and we'll look for any little things that we can, but I think it's a matter of just getting the vendors competing against each other. That's what's going to drive the price down, because Brookstone, they were right on the money.
Yeah.
They were right where I thought they'd be.
Well, they're going to come back with pricey because they want the job. They're going to, and it's out for bid again, so they know where they were, and now they're going to have to come down to see where you want them to be.
Yep, or we need them to be for our budget.
Yeah. All right.
And there's no chance that this is going to take the price down below the grant money.
Mm-mm.
Oh no. We had the grant only paid for the structural, mechanical, and a portion and the electrical. We actually had to break. The reason that we have SWR 20-5 is the grant has to be less than 5. The project that is subject to the grant has to be less than 500,000. We received the full award of our grant, and it's a 15% match. It was like our portion of it, I think, was like 416,000 or 460,000. So no, there's no way I'll get below that. And if I do, I would be dancing.
Okay.
So we have a motion to reject all three bids and rebid it and with or equal.
Yes.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, you got it, Freddie.
That completes my report, Mr. Chairman, unless the board has any additional questions.
Well, you answered them all. So we'll turn it over to Barbara.
Actually, I don't have anything because most of the work that I've been actively involved in is working with Fred on the bids and securing all the necessary property interests for the projects.
Okay.
I don't know, I can't remember if I told you this at the July 1st meeting or not, but that third property owner for Stackhouse, we actually reached a compromise settlement with him.
Okay.
So I sent the paperwork out, talked to him about a week ago because I hadn't heard from him. He said he got very busy at work and would get back to me, but everything looked good. So
Good. Anybody else have any business to bring up?
Just a question, Phil. Last meeting, the special meeting, we talked a bit about the process for the sale of the sewer system. And we had a bunch of comments. I didn't have any personally, but there was some from the other members. I'm just wondering if there would be an opportunity to provide input, even if not asked for, to the Board of Supervisors on that process.
well, if I may, at this point, Mr. Phillips, we can't really discuss anything because there's a court order prohibiting the township from making any decisions or discussions pending a hearing, and that hearing is scheduled next week.
Okay.
So we just have to sit tight for now and not say anything.
That's it. So after the court proceedings, then either we can talk about it or we can't talk about it.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyone else have anything? Anybody want to call for an adjournment?
Oh, they all want to stay on.
I'll make a motion to call for adjournment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the only thing I mentioned to you is I told Greg that we're pretty much covered everything unless Fred needs us on the on that new bid to come back out again. But we really don't need an August meeting, right, Greg?
Yeah, unless something else comes up, like the bidding, that would be it. So right now we have it scheduled for the 27th, the fourth Thursday. We didn't move it up to the 20th like I was looking to do.
Okay.
Be available then. So if we do it, it would have to be at a different date or the 27th.
Okay. Well, we'll just wait for that. And then if anything comes up with, we can talk about the sale or not talk about the sale, then we will have a meeting.
Okay.
All right. Because we are, Barbara, if I'm right, we are a municipality authority.
We are, but years ago, the authority assigned all of its rights and obligations to the township. There's a lease agreement. So ultimately the township makes the final decisions, and that's just based on the way the documentation was done years ago, and it was renewed in 2006 or something like that. I've gone through that agreement.
Okay. Yeah. Because 2016 didn't bring it to the authority. They just, okay.
I don't know how it came about, but there's a lease, an extension of the lease.
Right. Okay. I just asking the question.
No, I know, but I reviewed it. I saw it.
Okay. All right. So if that's it, we're adjourned and we'll just stay in touch. And I thank everybody for being on.
Great. Thanks. Have a nice evening, everybody.
And
Stay safe.
Stay safe and well.
Take care.